What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Wannabe Tuners, where we play around and try to go fast. My name's Eric. Today's video, we're gonna be taking out the old gal here, okay? The good old 2009 Mazdaspeed 3. Let's take a look at her. There she is, sitting here in all her glory. Let's head back on into the dungeon here because we can't be seen out there. We gotta hide. Just kidding. It's just quiet around here, in here. Where am I? I don't really know. Maybe I like being isolated. It's weird. What am I gonna talk to you guys today about? Well, basically we're gonna get this car out of the garage, onto the road, you know, take it out of hibernation per se. But I did wanna talk to you guys a little bit about some tips and tricks on what I like to do before I store the vehicle for the winter. And then what we're gonna do when we initially start the engine after it's been sitting for a long time. And in this case, Snowball, which is my vehicle's name, has been sitting for 6 months, right? Since November of 2024, we're now in April. So the engine has not been running for a long time. What do I do when I initially start the engine? We're gonna get into that in this video. And I'm also gonna share some tips and tricks on what I do prior to storing the vehicle for the winter. This is pretty obvious, okay? But it doesn't hurt to talk about it a little bit, right? Oil change. Do a fresh oil change on the vehicle, right? Because if you've got some dirty oil in there, it's not good to let it sit. It could become acidic from what I've read, and you know, do your car a favor. You love your turbo car, right? So just get some fresh oil in there, take care of the vehicle, all right? Next thing, full tank of pump gas. And now when I say pump gas, you gotta make sure you got pump gas in there. If you were running an alcohol mix in the tank, that alcohol can cause some issues throughout the winter as it's being stored. I've seen some people complain of, you know, some sludge building up and stuff like that when they're running methanol in the tank and stuff. So yes, you wanna run alcohol mix in your tank if you want extra octane, but if you're storing the vehicle for, you know, extended period of time, like throughout the winter, you want just pure pump gas in there, and you want the tank to be full. So it's a good idea to maybe run 1 or 2 tanks of gas, of pump gas only, through the tank, through the fuel system, just to flush out any alcohol that might be mixed in there. That's gonna be something that is a good idea. Obviously you have to flash your ECU to be able to handle that pump gas. So unfortunately, for those 2 tanks that you flush it through, you might not be making as much power. That's the bad news. But full tank of gas, then just to top it off a little bit, put a little bit of fuel stabilizer in there. Keeps things nice and fresh to prevent moisture from getting absorbed into that fuel. So when you go to fire it up the following season, she fires right up nice and strong. The last thing that I like to do, set my tire pressures a little bit higher so that I reduce the potential for flat spots, okay? These are my tires, Potenza RE71Rs. They've been pretty good, but they're kind of worn out now, so I'm gonna have to get some new ones. Oh my God, the wind is through the roof today. Yes, that is terrifying. I was not expecting that big bang. So what else can I say? That's about it, guys. I mean, you know, oil change, full tank of pump gas with some fuel stabilizer, and set your tire pressures a little bit higher. That's all I do. 6 months, no problem. Now, what's really important is the first startup after 6 months. This is just something that I like to do. I mean, it's not necessarily necessary per se, but there's a reason why I do this prior to initially starting the engine. I'm gonna share that with you guys just in a second here. But the reason why I do this is because I have a theory. And here's what the theory is. If the engine's been sitting for an extended period of time, where is all the engine oil? Well, it's all in the oil pan, right? Now you can imagine if you start your car and you drive it every day, you're still gonna have some residual oil throughout the engine, right? Now, let's take a look here. Built motor, forged pistons, forged rods, upgraded valve springs, super simple, nothing crazy. But it hasn't been running for 6 months. So what do we have to do in this situation? Well, we need to prime the engine, right? We need to basically crank the engine over to get the oil that's all drained down to the oil pan back to the bearings, back to the cylinder head, rod bearings, main bearings, camshaft journals, all that kind of stuff is completely bone dry, right? Theoretically. I mean, I would imagine it's completely bone dry because it's just been sitting here. The car's just been sitting here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna prime the engine. And a lot of you Mazdaspeed guys are thinking, okay, just hold your gas pedal all the way to the floor and just crank it over to get the oil circulating. Well, this is where I don't do just that. What I end up doing, guys, is I prime it with, wait for it, the spark plugs removed, okay? And the reason why I prime it with the spark plugs removed is because I want zero compression inside the cylinders as this thing is initially priming with oil. Because if we've got compression inside the cylinders, what do we have? We essentially have load on the rod bearings and the main bearings. There's a little bit of load going on there, right? And if we have metal on metal contact, who knows what's gonna happen? When I took my blown engine apart, I looked at the upper half of the rod bearings and I saw wear on those rod bearings. And the only conclusion that I can come to was that the engine was indeed exposed to metal on metal contact. Now this could be from cold starts, and it's probably most likely from cold starts when there's no oil initially at that bearing until the oil pump forces oil through to those oil galleries and, you know, cushions the clearance between the bearing and the actual journal, right? So let's go ahead, take the spark plugs out, and prime this engine up. Ow! Just hit my head on the hood. I got my trusted DeWalt brushless bit driver. I guess you could call it that. I don't know. See, with the spark plugs removed, oh my god. Oh my god. With the spark plugs removed, we're not gonna have pressure buildup inside the cylinders when we're priming the engine. And we're not gonna have force being applied to the tops of the pistons because all that pressure is gonna be vented out through the spark plug holes. So this will reduce the chances of metal on metal contact until oil pressure reaches the bearings. And I only do this when the car's been sitting for an extended period of time. Like over the winter. Now the battery voltage might be a little bit low, so I might have to hook up some booster cables to it. Which brings me to another idea, that it's a good idea to have a trickle charger connected to your battery over the winter. I had my battery disconnected, but who knows, maybe it just kind of discharged on its own. This also allows us to take a look at the spark plugs to see if the engine's been running good. Cylinder 4 looks pretty good. Cylinder 3 looks good. You could technically double check your spark plug gap while you're in here. Cylinder 2 doesn't look too bad. Cylinder 1 looks good too. So we're in the car now, spark plugs are removed. I've connected the battery and tightened it down. The goal is to use my oil pressure gauge and crank it and prime it until we see oil pressure. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna hold my accelerator pedal all the way to the floor, which will shut off the fuel injectors, and I'm going to crank it maybe in 5-second intervals so I don't burn out the starter motor, and I'm gonna wait until I see some oil pressure on my oil pressure gauge. Put the key in the ignition, turn the climate control off completely. There is my oil pressure gauge right there. The one on the right, you can see it flickering because the frames per second is a little bit different. What I'm gonna do, hold my accelerator pedal all the way to the floor, push the clutch in, pull the handbrake up first, push the clutch in, accelerator pedal to the floor, and I'm just gonna keep cranking at about 5-second intervals until I see some oil pressure build up. See, there's not even oil pressure there yet. So you can imagine if we started it, we'd have like no oil anywhere throughout the engine. Oh, starting to see some oil pressure. Okay, we'll do it one more time, guys. All right, we are good. See oil pressure there? We primed the engine with no spark plugs in. And you can even tell that the spark plugs removed, the starter motor doesn't have to try as hard to spin the engine. Pretty much no load on the starter motor. Okay guys, so we've primed the engine now. I'm gonna put the spark plugs back in. We're ready to actually start this bad boy up. Alrighty, spark plugs are in. Quickly, last final check. Oil level, currently running AMSOIL 5W50, full synthetic. Oil level looks good. Coolant level looks good. Everything's tight. Ready to start it up. Gee, I wonder whose that is. All right, guys, thank you for watching today's video. I hope you gained some good knowledge out of this video. I'm gonna go take this thing for a rip, and hopefully, just hopefully, it doesn't blow up. See you in the next video.